May I now request Ms. Lynne to make her presentation.
Hi, good morning. I think an appropriate greeting is Eid Mubarak. Thank you all for coming together on a Friday. I know it's quite a busy day and you've probably had a long week and you're gearing up for exams. I wanted to take some time to talk a little bit more about the center in Mumbai and then also talk about higher education in the United States. Before that, I just want to thank you all for being here and the student volunteers who I see walking around the room making the event happen. Thank you very much to Dr. Khan for such a nice introduction and to Professor Ali for making such a wonderful welcome. It's a real pleasure to be here. On behalf of Janardhan and Almitra, we feel very, very welcome. And it's always nice to come to Aurangabad. It's a very nice change from Mumbai, so it's been a good trip so far. A little bit more about the center. Again, we're based in Mumbai, and in addition to having the study of English language programs, we have a full library where we have about 15,000 periodicals, books, and journals that are there for members' use. And we have a pretty healthy membership roster at this point, but we welcome more and more. The focus of the books is on American history, culture, society, and literature, and it is really in theme with our work to bring together Indians and Americans in dialogue and exchanging of ideas on common interests. I think at this point I want to contextualize a little bit more about higher education in the United States and the rest of the work that the Consulate and the American Center and overall the US mission to India, what we're doing here. As most of you know, the relationship between India and the United States at this point is at an all-time high. This is really based on a lot of different factors. I'd like to just sum up four. It's first, we're both democratically run governments. The United States being the oldest and India being the largest. But we believe in a system, as Dr. Khan rightly pointed out, that all men and all women are created equal. And I'm a firm believer that women hold up half the world, so I'm glad to see so many here. We also work on a system towards economic prosperity and security. This is something that's part of our government ideals. We work to develop social and environmental issues, and then finally, on access to quality education. In the recent weeks, we've of course had a lot more change happening in the United States with a newly elected president and a new cabinet coming in, and they'll take office on January the 20th, 2009. And I think the worldwide media has focused a lot on President-elect Obama, certainly the US media has, and everyone is very optimistic with a high level of expectations. I think in our office we're no different. In light of the recent events in Mumbai, and our home, which has definitely suffered quite a bit, over the last few weeks, there's heightened collaboration between our governments and the international governments of the world to find an answer to something that's plaguing all of us. Time will tell, but it's something that we're working jointly with together. So those are two other examples where there's further collaboration between our governments. So that's just a bit of an overview on US government relations, and I'll just run through them on the slides. Again, it's a system of democratic practices. We also believe in a free and independent media, the economic prosperity and security. And just to highlight some of this, exports, US exports to India were up 72% last year, and two-way trade increased 30%. Everyone is also suffering from the financial crisis, which also time will tell how that works out. But there are still dialogues between our big businesses, our large corporate partners, and the dynamism is there despite the liquidity issues. On our social issues, we do work on public health. One of our bigger programs in India is on HIV/AIDS. And then finally on the access to quality education. In addition to the Access Language program that Dr. Khan spoke about, we have something called the Fulbright program, which was recently renamed this summer to be called the Fulbright and Nehru Scholarship and Grants Program. Maybe some of you are familiar with this, but it does work to bring together American and Indian academics in a two-way exchange program. So right at this point, we have about 75 American scholars working and living in India and researching on various academic themes related to Indian culture, society, and politics. And at the same time, there's about 120 Indian academics on the same type of scholarship, studying and working and researching in the United States. They go to a variety of different institutions. They begin at a researcher level, so after their PG years, and then they go up to teacher exchange as well as visiting faculty. I want to touch briefly on Indian students in the United States. Indian students comprise the largest number of foreign students in the United States at this point. The data on the slide is from 2007. Our 2008 reports show that there are 92,000 Indian students doing some part of their undergraduate or graduate education in the United States. This is the highest number, again, of any country around the world. This is a startling statistic. If you go to the next slide, you can see how many foreign students there are in the world, in the United States at this point, from around the world. In 2006, 2007, it was 582,000 people. Again, we follow a little bit of a different numbering system, no locks in the United States. And Indians comprise about 14% of all foreign students. The host institutions for international students in the US basically are in California and New York City. This is according to the entry data that we have. So if you do have interest in studying in the United States, you can see you're in very good company of people going there. What do these students actually study? Most of them are doing business, then engineering, physical and life sciences, social sciences, and finally mathematics and computer sciences. So it's a range of topics in a range of different states from a wide range of countries. But the bottom line is the highest number still come from India and traditionally have come from India over the last 3 to 4 years. So why is there this increased interest to study in the United States? It is a global education. There's variety and flexibility. Technology and research labs are at cutting edge and are well funded. There's opportunities for hands-on training and practical application within your field. There's campus diversity, opportunities on campus ranging from extracurricular activities, in-classroom and out-of-classroom work, as well as support services and financial assistance. The U.S. campus experience is probably different than any other around the world. I did my undergraduate in the U.S. and my graduate work in London, and there's a certain camaraderie and a certain type of collaboration that happens on a U.S. campus where it is definitely a community. You live there, you work there, you study there, you eat and drink and socialize there, and it really does come be part of your life for the 4 years that you're there. Just going to choosing a U.S. university, what are some factors that people look at? There's accreditation. There's a national body, just like in India, that gives a certain amount of qualification or okay and I guess approval or accreditation. So you want to always look for an accredited U.S. university. Then you look to a field of study. People always want to go to Harvard or Princeton or Yale because they've heard of them and they have a very good reputation and they have a brand recognition. It's the same reason why people want to drive BMW cars or they want to drink Coca-Cola. They think there's a brand recognition. However, that might not be the best choice for you. That's when you want to look at the fields of study and understand which type of university actually has the best field of study for you. For example, many people will want to go to Harvard for certain types of biological sciences, not realizing that there are far better universities and some that are actually at a state level that are much better in a certain field. You would also look at department strength. That's another complement of the field of study. How well known are certain professors in the department? How well published are they? These are questions to ask when you're looking at U.S. universities. Research facilities. This is of course important when you are going to be doing sciences or any type of maths or applied sciences. Cost and financial aid, I think this is one of the biggest factors determining where people will go and look at U.S. universities. Geography and climate, are you someone who wants to experience snow, or do you want to always have sunny days and warm weather? Urban and rural, enrollment size, and admission requirement and deadlines are also all factors that play a part when you're looking at a U.S. university. That's your choice. Those are things that you would think about. But what does that U.S. university think about when they're looking at you? They look at certain things such as extracurricular hobbies. What did you do in addition to your course of study? Many people have straight A's or have very accomplished test scores. But what else did you do to round out your experience? Did you have a job? Did you put some hands-on training into your field of study? They also look at your SOP or your essays. So your statement of purpose, an SOP, or your essays. How well are you able to explain what it is you actually want to do? Then recommendations. What do your professors or your peers or faculty advisors say about you as well? Academic background is of course important, as is work experience, as are test scores. People can do very, very well on tests, but they can also not have very good interpersonal skills. And the universities these days are looking for a very well-rounded person. I think well-rounded is a very hard term to define. The concept being that they want someone who will contribute not only academically, but to the campus community as a whole. Just touching on international students and how much do they pay for studying in the US. On average, they pay between $16,000 and $46,000 for tuition and living expenses for the academic year. That is per year, and that is an astounding cost. That's US dollars. But where does this money come from? The money comes from, namely, personal and family costs, charges, and expense and funds. The college or university itself. U.S. universities have extensive programs for financial aid, and this does not stop just because the student is from another country. Current employment, so an employer might be helping cover some of the costs. The host government, so many people are here studying in India on country or host country, home country scholarships. And then private sponsors, people who are sponsored by a corporation or another type of private organization. Some options for financial aid include tuition waivers. So you would come in because you have excellence in a certain field, and therefore your excellence and your performance is rewarded by tuition waivers. Fellowships or scholarships, same idea. Working on campus. I think most American students have a job, a fee-paying or a salary-earning job on campus. When I was an undergraduate, I was a tour guide on campus, so I led tours. It was not the most glamorous job, but it was very well paid. So I was happy to do it and walk around showing the university to prospective students. You can also get an internship, find loans, co-op programs, or help with the teaching and research that's going on in your campus. Let's talk a little bit about the U.S. university system in general. This will help contextualize some of the terms that I've been talking about already, and perhaps give you a good frame of reference. There are different types of institutions, and this is something that you should be familiar with if you are interested in studying in the United States. There are public universities, which are basically state-run and have some type of perhaps public funding through a state or a national mechanism. There are also community colleges, which are in a smaller town and have a smaller student body and usually offer 2-year degrees as opposed to a 4-year degree. Independent colleges and universities, or private, are where you pay the majority of the tuition, and they're normally 4-year degree or undergraduate degree programs. There are also minority or religious affiliated colleges, and this is where they are catering to a certain underserved community historically, but they've become more mainstream. So for example, there are colleges in the United States that are still for African American applicants and students only, or others that are for Catholic or Catholic-based students only. Just to go into a little bit further detail, again, there's the public universities. They have a larger student body and offer a wider range of subjects. Then you have community colleges that are smaller, slightly smaller, and usually offer a 2-year college degree and hopefully will feed into a 4-year degree program. So you can do a 2-year degree at the community college and then go on to do a 4-year, to complete out a 4-year program at a state university. Independent colleges and universities, those are the private, they're a bit smaller but more expensive. And then minority serving and religiously affiliated. So those are 5 different types of colleges in the United States. How does the system work, and what is the undergraduate experience like? In general, there's a lot more discussion and activities in American classrooms. There's active debate and challenging of lecturers, and I think that's something that's very different between the US and the UK and probably the US and India, where there's a lot more hands-on work. You always have to do your reading and your assignments, but there's much more debate in that sense. There's different ways the academic year is organized, and that can be, hopefully it's there on the slide, that can be through a semester where you would go a fall and a spring and then a summer semester, so they're divided over a 9-month and 3-month term. Or there's a quarter system where there's a fall, winter, spring, and summer quarter. There's 4-1-4 where you have 2.5 months in the fall, then 1 month in December, then spring, and then a summer. So these are just different ways the academic calendar can be organized. And this is really to help you understand the terminology that's used when trying to explain an academic calendar in the United States. So how does this actually all work? This is a pretty good diagram, and we'll stop here just for a second so you can see more of this. In the United States, we have a very different academic system to what you have here. Instead of 10 plus 2 plus 3, we start off by going through the 12th grade, and that's high school. So you don't enter college until you're 17 or 18 years old, mostly 18 years old. And then you enter college either going to a community college, which is a 2-year program, as shown on the left, on the bottom of the chart, or college or university, which is 4 to 4.5 years. So again, we go through the 12th grade, so there's no 10 plus 2, it's all through the 12th grade, and that's in your high school or your public school system at home, and then you go off to a college or university or community college. And we don't follow the British system that you have here, where your college might be affiliated to a university. They're largely independent. So you might have a state university system, much like the state of California has a system of colleges all over the state, as does the state of New York, as does the state of Florida. However, we do not affiliate the way you affiliate here, so it's just a little bit of a different system. So we use the term college to define basically a smaller type of university, where you use the term college in a completely different way. And I know it can be very, very confusing, but that's a difference there. So again, after you finish high school, you're 17 or 18 years old, you would then go on for 2 years at a community college or 4 years as an undergraduate at a college or a larger university. After you finish your undergraduate degree, you would earn a bachelor's degree. So that could be a bachelor's of science, that could be a bachelor of arts, that could be a bachelor in communications, but you earn a B and then fill in the rest of the letters, degree. So I earned a BA. I earned a BA in government and economics and French. Then you have the option to go into the work world, or people go on to do a graduate degree program. And this will be different for the different types of graduate studies that people would do. For example, I did not go on to graduate school immediately. I went to work. I decided that I had done my 4 years, I was done with school, I wanted to go earn some money, and I was tired of having homework. So I went to work. A lot of people do this. Sometimes the cost of the undergraduate university experience means you cannot afford to go to graduate school right away, or you aren't really sure what you want to do and you want to work for a little bit. And that was my case. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do and I wanted to work for a little bit. For other types of professional degrees, such as medical school, law school, or business school, there's different ways to think about work experience. For example, medical school, you pretty much want to get started right away because a MD, or a medical doctor degree, takes 4 years, and then you have countless years of residency and practical experience. A law school degree in the United States, or a JD, a Juris Doctorate, is what JD stands for. It's Latin, it's in Latin, goes for 3 years. And then in between your academic years, you always have work experience as well. Business school, or the Masters of Business Administration, the MBA, is a 2-year degree. In the United States, for MBA programs, there's a heavy emphasis on work experience. They do not want people who have just graduated from undergraduate. There's no value for the practical management of business administration degree. They heavily encourage many years, probably 4 to 6 to 8 years of work experience. Then finally, there's master's degrees program, which would be 2 years, and that's what I have. I have a master's in public administration and economics. And then you can go on to do a PhD in graduate school. And PhD programs can range from anywhere to 2 to 8 years, depending on your research and the academic requirements of the college. So this is a very helpful chart to explain, a very helpful chart to explain how the average American student moves from high school, or the first 12 years of schooling, to undergraduate education, to get your college degree or your university degree, to move on to a graduate degree program. It doesn't always flow perfectly. I worked, for example, for 7 years before I went back to graduate school. And a lot of people will never go on to graduate school. There are plenty of people who have never done a graduate school degree and are functioning completely fine in the United States. So it just varies. It depends on your personal preference and your interest. Okay. We're just going to skip through the next few slides quickly. And I want to talk a little bit about the application process. So we've talked about what factors go into choosing a university, but I want to talk about how you actually apply. And what is this application process? For people in the United States who are applying to an undergraduate degree program, you start doing this in the fall of your last year of high school. So that 12th year, as you go back to school, you start applying. And this is a timeline for fall 2009. So this is somebody, if someone's trying to go to school next fall in the United States, this is the timeline that they would follow. They would begin taking a series of tests, either the TOEFL or the SAT, which is a standard aptitude test. SAT is what it's called. And that is a test that most universities in the United States require. There's a handful that do not, so the majority of them require SAT. There used to be another test called the ACT, but that has been phased out, so now it is the SAT. So you would want to start looking at the colleges that you're interested in the spring of the year before you want to go to school. You would then make a short list, bearing in mind all those factors we talked about, the accreditation, where the school is located, your chosen course of study, the cost, the department strengths, where your parents feel comfortable with you going, all those factors. Take that all into consideration and make a short list in the spring and the summer. You want to start taking the SAT or preparing to take the SAT probably a little bit earlier than the spring. It's quite a difficult exam, and if you're not as comfortable in English, it might be something that's a new type of test. The application process begins November to March, and then you hear from the universities between April and June. You would then apply for your student visa right prior to departing for the United States, and you would ideally have some sort of orientation before classes start in July or August. The U.S. academic calendar usually begins in September. So we go September to December, and then January to July. Those are our semesters. So we work in a different system, also from India that way. So it's a long investment of time, and it's something that you'd weigh and take very, very seriously. For graduate school programs, it's roughly the same. You don't necessarily need to be taking the SAT. There's a series of other tests that we'll talk about in just a second. So for admission intakes, there's 4 different admission intakes. The largest is usually in the fall. There are also smaller admission intakes or entering classes in the spring, winter, and summer, but the majority of students are accepted for the fall. And that's what you want to be thinking about. So you want to be aiming to start school in September. So think back almost a year and a half in advance is what you need for the application process. What about the entrance exam tests that you would have to take? So you have the TOEFL, or the Test of English as a Foreign Language, and all students coming from foreign countries, no matter what medium you've been instructed in, need to be taking the TOEFL exam, the Test of English as a Foreign Language. And you need to be demonstrating a certain level of English language ability for acceptance to different types of colleges. Some colleges look at the TOEFL score and say, it's too low, we won't accept them. Some look at it and say, that's okay, the person can do a month-long intensive English language course and then begin as a student. So when you are looking at the U.S. university selection process, look at the TOEFL score and bear that in mind, because it is not consistent across the boards. Different universities have different levels. The same can be said for the SAT. Different colleges of different academic aptitude have different levels of acceptance for the SAT. For the graduate school entrance exams, that's where you would take the LSAT, or the Law School Admission Test, LSAT. Then you have the GRE, the Graduate Record Examination, and that is an exam that you would take if you're looking to do a master's degree in general studies, history, languages, literature, economics, political science. You need to be taking the GRE. It's a more general exam. The GMAT is for MBA programs. Then for medical school exams, there's the MCAT. MCAT is what it stands for. Eligibility requirements for going to the United States, that you've completed the 12th class. So again, that's just like all US university students. Then you have had 16 years of formal study. So they want to be seen that that 12th grade of completion. So this is where Indian students can sometimes get caught up, because you can't really go to a US university with just that 10th standard. You need to have that +2 or 1 more year. So that's where you need to be thinking a little bit strategically also about how your timing should work. And then work experience for certain types of programs. And again, we touched on that with the MBA and some of the graduate school programs. Graduate admission process is a highly decentralized process. It is literally a group of academics and admissions officers sitting around a table and reading application after application after application. Some they will rule out on test scores, that the test scores were too low or too high, or whatever the case might be. But there's a serious consideration to everything that's included in the admission application. And that's what we talked about. The work requirement, or the previous work, the essays, the letters of recommendation from your faculty. Of course, they take into eligibility, that's a huge factor, and then admissibility. Can this person actually function in this university? Will it be too difficult? Are the cultures too dissimilar from where they're coming from? Will they not be able to learn the language or adapt to the American university system? So those are some basics about the US university system. We've talked about how the system itself works, the different types of colleges and institutions, what to look for when you're thinking about how and when to apply, the timeline, and the exams and entrance exams that you need to be taking and preparing for going to the United States. A totally separate topic is the student visa. And this is something that we get a lot of questions about, and I'm going to go through the process now as well. The US visa policy follows the mantra of secure borders and open doors. We continue to welcome legitimate students, business travelers, tourists, performance artists, people from all walks of life, but we do go through a pretty rigorous screening process. We do have additional security steps for students. There's a SEVIS program, and I unfortunately can't remember what SEVIS stands for, but it's a system that you as a student, an incoming student, would pay into to be registered. And that's so we can track to make sure all the people coming on student visas are coming and going to the schools where they say they're going to and completing degrees from those schools. There's also an in-person interview. Every person, it's now international law or US law, anyone who is applying for a US visa must be seen in person, and everyone needs to be fingerprinted. There's a 10-digit fingerprinting process, so every person has this, no matter what kind of visa you're applying for. In India, the system for applying for a visa is that you pay the application and the fees at a designated HDFC bank. This way, we have no fee collection in the U.S. consulate, and there's absolutely no money changing hands between anyone from the U.S. consulate and anyone from the application pool. You then schedule the appointment online using our outsourced contractor, VFS, and then as a student, you have to pay the SEVIS fee. And again, this is this registration system, and it's an authentication system for all students. On the day of the interview, you appear in person at the time and date of your interview, and you bring with you certain documents: the printed appointment letter, the visa application forms, the SEVIS payment receipt, photographs, and bank receipts. This is also when you would bring your letter of acceptance, and you would bring information about your intended course of study. We have a really easy time determining legitimate students and not legitimate students. As you can see, the process for applying for admission to a U.S. university is lengthy. It takes 1.5 to 2 years. It's also costly, between $15,000 and $50,000 a year. People who are legitimate and very interested in completing a U.S. degree stand out from those who do not. It's a time investment, it's a family investment, it's a financial investment, and it's something that we strongly take and look seriously at. Finally, if your visa is approved, the passport and visa are then couriered back to you. During the interview, you shouldn't be surprised if the interview lasts less than 3 minutes. We do approximately 1,500 visas a day at the U.S. consulate, and unfortunately we would love to have a long discussion with everyone and understand why they want to go to the United States. Unfortunately, we do not have the time or the manpower. In the 1950s, when our consulate first opened, the Consul General used to invite every visa applicant up to his house for tea. There are on average 8 visa applicants a day. A week. It was 8 a week. Unfortunately, the numbers have increased considerably, which is great, but we just have not as much time. Also bear in mind that this is an interview. This is not a document review session. You can bring as many stacks of documents as you'd like, and you should know that the officer may not look at them. Because it is an interview, we want to hear from you. Why have you spent so much time applying to the United States to study? Why are you so interested in studying in the U.S.? What steps have you taken to make sure you realize this dream or this professional ambition that you may have? You also should know that you will be asked personal questions. This is not an interrogation, it's merely to check the bona fides of your application. In the interview, we want to ensure that you are credible and qualified, and that studying in the U.S. is the primary purpose of your travel. Also, that you're able to pay for all of your studies and your living expenses, and that you're going to return to the United States. A student visa is not a ticket, a one-way visa into the United States. The point is you're going to study in the U.S. and come back to India, much like any other visa. The final steps are, if you're approved, of course the visa will be couriered and the passport will be couriered back to you. And if not, if you're refused, you'll get a written explanation as to why you were refused. You are able to apply again, and you will be interviewed by a different officer, but you'll have to pay the application form again. Reasons people might be refused are illustrated in the Immigration and Naturalization Act, and this is a law created by Congress, but a different agency carries out enforcing the law. You would need to convince the officer of your credibility and your genuine interest in going to study in the U.S., and that you are not intending to immigrate to the United States. The visa is not an immigrant visa. It is a non-immigrant visa. It means you're going to go and come back. You are not going to stay. Applicants must establish their financial, social, and familial ties in India. This is your home country. The point is that you're going to be coming back. A separate section of the law is that you might be refused if there's any type of incomplete part of your application. So 221G is pending. Basically says we need more information. You've come for an interview, but we're not able to make a final decision because we need more information. This is basically just putting the application on hold. So we've met you, things sound okay, but we need more information to make a decision. Regulations to keep in mind are that first-time student visa applicants should not apply for their visa more than 120 days before the date school starts. So if school starts on September 1st, you should not be applying for a visa in January. You should be applying for a visa in July or September. And anyone traveling for the first time on a student visa will not be admitted into the U.S. more than 30 days on the report date. So again, if you're starting school September the 1st, you can only enter the United States as of August 1st, so 30 days prior to the start of your course. For more information, there's very helpful websites. There's the Bureau of Consular Affairs. Consular Affairs is like our immigration office. Then there's the U.S. Consulate in Mumbai. the U.S.-India Education Foundation, and the U.S.-India Education Foundation is the office for one-stop shopping on any information about studying in the United States. And then there's our VFS partner, and those are the people who make the appointments for us. We also welcome you to learn a little bit more about the U.S. in general. There's a website called america.gov, and then also our consulate website and the American Library website. Finally, just about UCF, or again the U.S. India Education Foundation. We take inquiries for them by mail, phone, and they also have fairs. It is a membership-based organization, so you do need to become a member, but they do welcome all types of general queries. Great. I'd welcome any questions that people might have as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lynne, for your brilliant presentation. I would have very much appreciated if there would have been a question and answer session between you and Ms. Lynne, but one of the greatest difficulties one faces is about visa approval. I have heard and seen so many cases where visa is not very easily given to the people, and most of them are denied in spite of them being genuine cases. What can be done in this regard, or how to approach the visa officers properly? That would be something which we would like to hear from you.
Okay. As I explained, we look for the bona fides of the students, and it's a very long process to apply for entrance to the United States for university admission, whether you're doing an undergraduate or a graduate degree. It takes almost a year and a half, and it's going to involve a lot of commitment from your family and yourself. It will also require a lot of thought. Why do you want to go and study biomedical engineering? Why do you want to go and study computer science? This is something you have thought about for a long time. You need to explain this clearly in your interview. The refusal rates in India are actually surprisingly low. I think there are more stories than actual refusals when you consider how many we do. Again, there's 1,500 people applying for a visa every single day, and that's only in Mumbai. We have visa adjudication offices in New Delhi, Chennai, Calcutta, and now in Hyderabad. So if you think in Mumbai we're doing almost 9,000 visas a week, that's a lot of visas. That's a huge, huge, huge demand, and the refusal rate is surprisingly lower than you would think. And also bear in mind, there are 92,000 Indian students in the U.S. who all successfully were issued visas to study. There's also a big number in Australia, Canada, and the UK. So there's a set of trailblazers who have clearly gone before you. The visa interview process should really be seen by a legitimate student or a legitimate applicant for whatever type of visa category as just a conversation with someone new about why you want to go to the United States. There's no sense of intimidation and apprehension and uncertainty and nervousness, which will of course be there, but please think of it as just a conversation about why you're interested in going to the United States and why you're going to come back to India. Again, something that's very, very important to keep in mind is the difference between a non-immigrant visa and an immigrant visa. An immigrant visa is for someone who will go and stay and live forever in the United States. The only way you can get an immigrant visa is if you have a family member there. And that's an immediate family member. So that's husband, wife, son, daughter, mother, father. That's it. Every other case is a non-immigrant visa. You're going to go and you are going to come back. Even the H visas, where many people of Indian nationality are working in companies in the United States, that is a non-immigrant visa. They will go for 3 years, they will come back. So that's the reason to keep in mind. You are on a non-immigrant visa as a student. You are going to go and you are going to come back. It's very important to explain why you are going to come back. And again, we have a very high number of cases being adjudicated. The refusal rate is not as high as people think or as perceived by the press. And a lot of cases are not very credible. People who have very little interest in studying in the U.S. or have not done their homework at all on why they want to study in the U.S. And as I said, these cases stand out. It's an extremely long process for a foreign student, and an extremely long process for an American student. Everybody who's doing the interview has gone through the process. The entrance exams, the late nights of high school coursework, volunteering on the side, going through the application process. It's a lengthy process. A year and a half, if not 2 years to do it. We all know what that's taken. So we look at anybody who's a prospective student the same way. Did this person do what I did? Did this person spend all this time to make themselves a bona fide student? Much like how you guys are here today, you got here not because you just smiled and told a fib. You got here because of extremely hard work, dedication from your family, your parents, and your community, and an interest to do something in your professional life. It's the exact same thing. Exact same reason why.
Not actually the basic problem to ask people is financial conditions.
Right.
Because even applying for a visa is quite a big problem.
Right.
With all of people do. So are there any schemes or situations where the students who are really eligible for applying for visas in America but they don't have that financial conditions? So which are those schemes, or are there any schemes which run with the collaboration of Indian institutions or Government of India? And are there any resources through which we can ask people to apply for these sort of things? Would that be great with 16,000 minimum American dollars, a huge amount for a student who cannot be even a degree course in India, people are less skills in India. So which are those programs and schemes which will be beneficial for them?
This is a question that everyone's been hearing about the costs and how do you actually pay for your education, the cost of living, and just the visa application and the application fees in general. Again, it is expensive. That's something that we don't hide, but it is there. This is where I would point to people. This is where I would point to the U.S. India Education Foundation as your first stop for understanding information about scholarships and fellowships and university collaboration. I have here this little yellow book that's published by USEFI, that's put out by the U.S. India Education Foundation, and on page 4, there's a list of foreign scholarships and then other information for eligible candidates to go and study for their master's degrees in the U.S. So that's the first part. For scholarships and academic collaborations, there are American universities that are starting to come to India to start to do degree programs here. It's a very slow process, and it's taking a lot of time, and a lot of that's because of the government of India bureaucracy, not the lack of interest by the American universities. But UCF is also the first place to start to learn more about those. They actually keep a list of these types of programs. This is also where I would encourage people to look into the community college system in the United States. The community college system is a fraction of the cost of the private university or even the state university. After you complete the 2-year degree, you are normally eligible for the community college state university system. This is something that's very well established, for example, in the state of California. So people will go and complete a 2-year community college degree and then feed in or merge right into the University of California system. And I think a lot of foreign students find this to be a very accommodating system because of just adapting to a big campus can be hard, but a smaller college is much easier. There are also charitable organizations within India that will help to offset the costs of certain Indian students. One is the American Alumni Association, which gives about 25 to 35 grants each year for Indian students going to study in the U.S. They don't cover tuition, but they cover everything else. So the flights, the books, the accommodation. There's also charitable foundations such as
J.N. Tata Endowment Fund.
J.N. Tata Endowment Fund, which has also helped with academic costs. You're welcome. Any other questions? Any questions or anything else too? Yep.
If you go on a work permit, if you go on a non-immigrant visa, you also get work permit in the US.
The question is, if you go on a non-immigrant visa, do you also get a work permit in the U.S.? And the short answer is no. I'm going to explain that though. Again, the H visa category, people go on H2 or H2B visas, they have an agreement through their company to go and work in the United States. So for example, Tata Consultancies is famous for the number of H visas they all get issued to their staff.
The point is, Tata Consultancy Service worker is going to move the TCS office in New York City. So they'll go from Bombay to New York or New Delhi to New York for a 3-year stint to work at a client site. Of course they're going to get paid. Of course they're going to live and work in the U.S. But what they have done is they have gone to the U.S. government and said, we have a specific labor need. We need someone who knows this client, who knows JavaScript, who knows something specific. And the Department of Labor, our U.S. Department of Labor, says, okay, we understand you have a valid labor need. We will give you this H visa. That is why there's a restriction on the number of H visas that gets issued. That just like student visas, India is number one always with H visas. On the student visas, for the F, it's called an F visa, you are allowed to work on campus, only on campus, for 20 hours a week. So that means you could do a job like I had as a tour guide, you could work in the library, you could work in computer service support, so you could only work on campus. But in a lot of large research campuses, there is wonderful work to be had. You could work in a lab, you could work in a research facility, but again, you have to only work on campus. That's the restriction. For a B visa, the tourist B1 or B2, tourist or business person, no working at all. It's illegal. And if you are caught, you will get deported and you will get basically banned from ever entering the United States. The law is that serious and the law is that harsh. But you know what? The government of India does the exact same thing. I'm here on a visa so I can work in a diplomatic mission. My spouse is here because he's obviously we're married, so he's living with me here, working here, and he has his entitlement to work based on my visa and based on a negotiation between the government of India and the government of the United States. So these laws all follow reciprocity. What happens with us happens with India. Any other questions? Please feel free on any topic. Yeah.
What is the procedure of scholarship for a master's degree?
The question we here is, what is the procedure for scholarships for a master's degree? And again, this is going to depend on a lot of factors. It's going to depend on the university or college that you're looking at and how much financial aid they're willing to offer you. This is also going to depend on what types of scholarships or programs you have looked into yourself. So we touched on the American Alumni Association and the Tata Family Trust that do have scholarships. There's a long list of these organizations that will help to defray the cost of your education. And a good place to look is the USEFI, or U.S. India Education Foundation website, and they offer information on this very question. As a master's student, this is where the question of working on campus comes into play. A lot of people are hired or accepted with the understanding that they're going to help teach. They're going to be teaching assistants, and that will be a primary source of income. So the teaching assistants make a little bit more money than the library and the tour guides, but of course they're there because they have a certain type of professional qualification. So I hate to give you the answer that it varies and it depends, but that's the answer. It depends on your expertise, the university or college that you're going to, and looking into the private scholarships and grants, weighing the other two factors. So the information is there, but it does take a little bit more legwork for that. What else?
The student would like to study as well as work, continue working in the US.
Okay, the question is, if a student wants to continue study in the U.S. and then continue working afterwards, what is the procedure? For certain types of professional degrees that you would be getting in the U.S., there is the opportunity to stay on for 9 to 12 months for practical work experience. And this depends on the degree. So for example, if you're doing usually the MBA from an accredited and respected university, as a foreign student, you can find a position for 9 to 12 months, 6 to 9 to 12 months for a practical workplace application. Unfortunately, the student visa ends after that. The student visa is for the length and duration of your course, and then for certain degrees, you'd have to apply with the Department of Homeland Security for that type of practical experience. A lot of people on H visas, however, are eligible for the H visa because they have a degree from a U.S. university. It is not it's not a prerequisite. Is it a prerequisite? It is largely a prerequisite. So it is largely a prerequisite for an H visa, but you cannot just sit in New York City, finish your schoolwork, and then still sit in New York City and go from an F student visa to the H visa. You have to come back and you have to apply in India for that change of visa. It used to be that you could just sit in the US and apply for a change of status. That is a big no-no now, especially going from a student visa to an H visa. In some cases, it is allowed, and we have seen it allowed, and I have absolutely no idea why those cases are allowed, that people are allowed to change their status, and I have a feeling somebody knows somebody who knows somebody, but for 99.9% of the cases, it is not allowed. So you always have to come back, and for any type of change of status, so going from a student to a worker, you have to reapply in the consulate or embassy in your home country. So you can't just change from an F to an H. I know it sounds like an alphabet soup, and it can get very confusing, but an F is a student and an H is a worker. Anything else? We have time for one more question?
Is there any guidebook of this information related to all this?
Yes, the guidebook. I'm going to give you the website. Where you want to go, and the first place you want to look is the IEF, U.S. India Education Foundation. An easy way to remember this is an organization that runs the Fulbright program, so it's www.fulbright, India.org. This is the only organization that is approved by the U.S. government as a legitimate source of information for studying and preparing to enter the United States. I know there are many education consultants, but this is the only one that the U.S. government endorses, supports, and provides assistance to. So again, the website address is www.fulbright-india.org. We have offices in Mumbai, Chennai, Calcutta, New Delhi, Ahmedabad, and now Hyderabad, and Musafi is also in. And I think that is it at this point. Yeah. Okay. Any last minute burning question? Yes, one up front. The question is, physically staying in the United States is very expensive. When are you going to offer any distance courses? Ironically, you should ask that. I've just learned of an organization that's starting to do degree-worthy or U.S. degree-earning distance courses. It's taken this person about 1.5 years to set this up, and I cannot remember the name of this company. Akil Shahani's company. Unfortunately, the name of the company is completely escaping me right now, but we will make sure it gets to you. But it's very, very time-consuming because there's a lot of independence in the U.S. university system and a lot of centralization in the Indian university system. And there are two systems, as I described, that don't necessarily fit exactly together. We work on different academic calendars, we work on different entry policies, we work on different entry time frames. So again, if you've only completed your 10th standard in India, you can't just go into a U.S. university the way you go into a college in India. Those types of inconsistencies make it really hard to establish the degree online courses. There's also just trying to evaluate the bona fides of the candidate, making sure that the degree that's done online is the same that you would get in a U.S. classroom. These are all factors that make things very, very difficult and slow to start. But I would also encourage you to look at UCF and look at the courses that might be illustrated, and to keep your eyes open for tie-ups with U.S. universities, because they're happening a lot, but it's a very slow process. And the way we think tie-ups are happening is largely at this point on faculty exchanges, because that's what can be allowed under the law. Student exchanges are happening very slowly. We know that the Sheriff of Mumbai has issued now a Sheriff's Scholarship for people studying in the U.S. or the U.K. And so you might want to look at the Sheriff of Mumbai website, and it's open to any Indians. It's not exclusive just to people living in Bombay, so you might want to keep that in mind as well.